Welcome back to Starz Recapped. Today we're diving into the inspiring 2000 biographical drama Men of Honor. This powerful film follows the true story of Carl Brashear, the first African-American to become a U.S. Navy master diver. Set against the backdrop of prejudice, discipline, and unshakable determination, the movie takes us on a journey through Carl's struggles, from growing up in poverty to fighting against systemic racism and personal setbacks in the Navy. Along the way, he faces relentless opposition from Billy Sunday, a tough and skeptical Navy Master Chief whose complicated relationship with Carl becomes the heart of the story. This is not just a film about diving into the depths of the ocean, it's about diving into the strength of the human spirit. This boy's name is Carl. He lives with his parents in a quiet rural village. His father works as a corn farmer, toiling in the fields every day. Watching his father's endless hard work, Carl often felt pity for him and decided he wanted to help. At first, his father refused, telling Carl that his duty was to study and play like other children. But Carl kept insisting, and eventually his father allowed him to lend a hand on the farm. Years later, Carl had grown up. While he was busy working in the garden, his mother came and reminded him to get ready. That day was special. It was the day Carl was leaving for the United States Navy's selection program. Before he left, his father gave him one last request: never return to the village. Though the words were painful to hear, his father only wanted Carl to stay focused on his goals, build a future in the city, and not be held back by worries about home. At the very last moment, his father held him back and placed an old radio in his hands, a keepsake filled with memories. With tears glistening in his eyes, he whispered a trembling goodbye. Carl clutched the radio tightly and rushed toward the departing bus. Behind him, his parents embraced one another, crying silently as they watched their son move further and further away from them. When Carl reached the naval base, his dream was quickly tested. Instead of being trained, he was placed in the kitchen as a cook. At that time, the U.S. military did not accept black men as equal soldiers. They were still treated as servants to the white recruits. The following day, Carl and his friends noticed a white trainee swimming. One of them explained that swimming schedules were separated. White recruits and black recruits were not allowed to use the pool at the same time. Hearing this, Carl questioned why there had to be such a divide when all were human. Driven by his belief, he bravely jumped into the pool. The moment he entered the water, people around him mocked and insulted him. Even the captain ordered his assistant to drag Carl out. Because of that act of defiance, Carl was punished and locked away. When the ship's captain arrived, he admitted he was impressed by Carl's incredible swimming ability. Because of that, Carl was placed on the rescue swim team. Overjoyed, Carl quickly wrote a letter to his parents to share the good news. The very next day, an emergency struck. A helicopter went down in the middle of the ocean. In a panic, the captain immediately ordered a diver to rescue the trapped pilot. After what felt like hours, the diver finally surfaced. His name was Chief Sunday, one of the Navy's elite divers who held the prestigious rank of Master Chief. That was the highest rank in the Navy's diving unit. Sadly, although the pilot was pulled from the wreckage, his life could not be saved. A second diver was then sent down to recover the co-pilot, who was still underwater. At that time, diving gear weighed over 200 kilograms, which meant each diver could save only one person at a time. But just as the second diver descended, his safety line snapped, causing him to plummet to the ocean floor. Without hesitation, Chief Sunday jumped in without a suit, risking his own life to save the man. Against the odds, he managed to bring the diver back alive. However, the rescue came at a price. Chief Sunday's lungs were severely injured, and he was rushed to the hospital. Doctors told him he should never dive again until fully recovered. Hearing this, Sunday grew furious and caused a scene out of frustration. The next day, he was put on trial for his outburst. The courtroom was filled with Navy officers, and Carl was also present. In the end, the captain announced that Sunday would be stripped of his active duties and reassigned as a diving instructor. After the hearing, Carl approached the captain with a bold request. He wanted permission to join the Navy's diving program. He explained that he was deeply inspired by Sunday's bravery during the helicopter rescue, and from that moment on, he was determined to become a diver and save lives like him. Touched by Carl's determination, the captain agreed and transferred him from the swimming division to the diving unit. The next day, Carl arrived at the diving school. When he handed over his assignment letter, the guards looked puzzled. Never before had a black man been admitted into the Navy's diving program. Before long, Chief Sunday appeared. It turned out he would be Carl's instructor at the camp. But instead of encouragement, Sunday ridiculed him, saying black men had no place as divers and were only fit for kitchen duty. Hearing the insult, Carl chose not to argue. He stayed quiet, holding his patience, but deep inside he remained firm in his resolve. After Chief Sunday left the base, Carl stayed waiting by the gate all the way until evening. When Sunday returned and saw Carl still standing there, he grew irritated and offered to send him back to his village. But Carl refused, saying he had made a promise to his father that he would one day become a Navy man. Seeing his unshakable determination, Sunday finally allowed him inside the camp. Soon after, Carl was approached by another trainee named Snowhill, who was the only white recruit willing to greet him despite the color barrier. Snowhill explained that the camp was run by a tough ex-Marine known as Mr. Pappy. He even guided Carl to his assigned dormitory. But inside, a new white recruit openly protested Carl's presence. Later, when Chief Sunday arrived, he announced to all the trainees that Carl was now officially part of the program. Instead of welcoming him, most of the students packed their things and left, declaring they'd rather quit the Navy than share a room with a black recruit. In the end, only Carl and Snowhill remained in the dorm. That night, Sunday dragged Carl out of bed, doused him with water, and mocked him. He told Carl to remember his place and accused him of tarnishing his reputation just by being there. Despite the humiliation, Carl endured in silence and refused to give up. The next morning, training began. Sunday warned that many would fail because swimming and diving were two completely different skills. He called out Snowhill, who had been the fastest swimmer back in his hometown, to test his diving ability. But Snowhill struggled underwater and was immediately dismissed from training. Day by day, Carl and the remaining recruits pushed through the grueling exercises until the written exams arrived. Unfortunately, Carl scored poorly. He was warned that if he failed the next test, he would be expelled from the program. During the semester break, instead of resting, Carl went to the city library to study. There he met a nursing student named Joe, who worked part-time as a librarian. When Carl asked for help with his lessons, Joe refused at first, saying Navy coursework was too difficult and would take months to master. But after seeing Carl's persistence, she finally agreed to guide him. With her help, Carl studied harder than ever. And when the next exams came, he managed to achieve strong grades, securing his place in the program. That afternoon, Chief Sunday resumed dive training. He assigned 2 new recruits, Rourke and Ashar, the task of welding a sunken ship underwater. But in the middle of the work, the wreck suddenly shifted and nearly slid into a deep trench. In the chaos, Ashar's air hose got tangled, and from above, everyone could hear both recruits shouting for help. Without hesitation, Carl volunteered to go down and rescue them. With no other option, Chief Sunday allowed it, giving him just 5 minutes before their oxygen would run out. Underwater, Carl worked quickly, but in the middle of the rescue, Rourke panicked and swam away from him, leaving Carl frustrated. Even so, Carl stayed focused and managed to free Ashar from danger. Later, Chief Sunday announced an award on behalf of the Navy commander. Shockingly, the honor was given to Rourke instead, while Carl's heroic effort was ignored simply because of the color of his skin. Despite this injustice, Carl kept calm. Seeing his patience, many of the other recruits began to admire him and gradually opened up to being his friends. The following day, Carl called home to speak with his family. On the call, his mother broke the heartbreaking news that his father had passed away. She explained that his father had hidden his illness on purpose, not wanting Carl to worry and lose focus on his training and dreams. Devastated, Carl asked Joe to come and keep him company. While waiting, he was approached by a woman who introduced herself as Chief Sunday's wife. Seeing Carl in tears, she gently told him that she understood his pain, because in her own way, she shared the same kind of struggles. At that time, Chief Sunday's wife was also carrying her own sadness. On the very day of their wedding, her husband had chosen to celebrate with his Navy friends instead of being with her. She then invited Carl to join her at the bar where Sunday was drinking. When Carl entered, the entire room of Navy men turned their eyes on him. They quickly reported his presence to Sunday, who stormed over and scolded Carl harshly, saying a black man didn't belong there. Hearing this insult, Carl's anger finally boiled over. For the first time, he stood up to his coach, accusing him of being jealous because Carl was proving himself to be the better man. In the middle of the heated argument, Joe also arrived at the bar and was caught in the confusion. Fueled by pride, Sunday challenged Carl to an underwater breath-holding contest. The deal was simple. If Carl lost, he would be kicked out of training. But if he won, Sunday would allow Snowhill to return to the program. Tired of enduring constant humiliation, Carl accepted without hesitation. The two went head-to-head, and in the end, Carl emerged victorious. But when the challenge ended, Joe was nowhere to be seen. Carl rushed outside and caught up with her. He asked why she had left, and Joe revealed that she had come to say goodbye. She had accepted a nursing job in another city and was leaving the next morning. Shocked, Carl made a bold move and proposed on the spot. He promised that once he completed his training, he would find her again. The following day, Mr. Pappy called Sunday into his office. He ordered Sunday to make sure Carl failed the final exam, no matter what. Pappy refused to allow any black man to graduate from the diving program. Although Sunday often clashed with Carl, he despised the way Pappy abused his authority for personal prejudice. Deep inside, Sunday already knew Carl had surpassed him in skill and determination, but he was still bound to follow orders. When Sunday delivered the message to Carl, it turned into a fierce argument. Carl, still determined to take the test, refused to back down. In a fit of anger, Sunday smashed Carl's radio, the last gift left by his late father. Heartbroken, Carl was devastated. The next day, as all the recruits prepared for their examination, an unexpected sight appeared. Carl arrived, standing tall with unwavering determination. Locking eyes with his coach, he showed a confidence that could not be shaken. Seeing this, Sunday finally gave in and allowed Carl to take the exam with the others. The final exam began. From above, instructors tossed heavy bags filled with test equipment into the water for each trainee to retrieve. But when it was Carl's turn, something unusual happened. On Mr. Pappy's orders, Carl's bag was deliberately ripped apart. Underwater, Carl searched desperately but found nothing inside. Still, he refused to give up, continuing to feel around in the darkness of the sea. Hours went by, and one by one, the other candidates completed their tasks successfully, until Carl was the only one left below. Watching from above, Mr. Pappy told Sunday to leave Carl underwater until he ran out of air. Sunday was torn. Obeying the order meant destroying Carl's future, but refusing meant putting his own career at risk. Meanwhile, Joe, sensing something was wrong, left her workplace and rushed to the training site. By late night, Carl was still submerged. The other divers and even Sunday began to grow anxious, but Pappy kept yelling over the radio, demanding Carl be abandoned. At last, Sunday made a choice. He defied his superior's command and ordered the team to pull Carl up. But just as they prepared to drag him out, Carl suddenly surfaced on his own. Exhausted but triumphant. Against all odds, he had passed. The following day, the graduation ceremony took place. Snowhill returned to share both good news and bad news. The good news, he had been reinstated into the diving program. The bad news, Chief Sunday had been dismissed from the Navy for disobeying Pappy's orders and allowing Carl to succeed. As Carl packed his belongings, he was surprised to discover his father's old radio, repaired and working again. He realized Sunday had secretly fixed it for him. Years later, Carl achieved his dream and rose to become a respected senior Navy diver. By then, he was married to Joe, and together they had a son. His career led him to one of the most dangerous missions in U.S. history, recovering a lost nuclear bomb from the ocean floor. The commander warned that if the weapon detonated, the resulting blast would be powerful enough to wipe out an entire region. At first, the commander doubted whether Carl could complete the dangerous mission on his own. But once again, Carl silenced all doubts. He succeeded. His remarkable achievement was broadcast live across America. The man who was once looked down on simply because of his skin color was now celebrated as a national hero. Afterward, the commander ordered the rest of the team to lift the recovered bomb to the surface. But when Carl regained consciousness, he was shocked to find himself lying in a hospital bed. Joe gently explained what had happened. During the mission, his leg had been badly injured, nearly severed, and the doctors had concluded that he might never walk normally again. The news left Carl devastated. He felt like he had let his late father down by failing to live up to his promise. Meanwhile, Chief Sunday, who had already fallen into deep despair after losing his diving license, was staying in a mental hospital. One day, while sitting alone, a nurse handed him a newspaper. There, he read about Carl's accident. As Carl's former mentor, he felt compelled to visit him in the hospital. Soon after, the commander and his assistant visited Carl, and not long later, a naval officer named Captain Hanks also arrived. Carl pleaded with them to give him another chance to dive once he recovered. But seeing his condition, Hanks shook his head and said Carl would never be able to dive again. Refusing to accept defeat, Carl showed him a newspaper article about an Air Force pilot who had continued his career with just one leg. Using this as an example, Carl begged Hanks to grant him a few weeks to prove himself. He even asked the doctors to amputate his injured leg completely so that it would no longer hold him back. After everyone left, Jo, who had overheard the conversation, broke down in frustration. She scolded Carl for risking everything and begged him to abandon such a reckless dream. In that moment, Carl was torn between two choices: give up and live a quiet life with his family, or push forward and continue chasing his dream against all odds. In the end, Carl chose to fight for his dream once again. After surgery, he began training his body to adapt to life with one leg. Step by step, he forced himself to rebuild his strength. During one of his practice sessions, Chief Sunday came to see him. He admitted that when he first read the news of Carl's accident, he realized their fates were similar. Both had lost the ability to dive. But as his former instructor, he knew Carl's spirit was unbreakable. In Sunday's eyes, Carl was a man who never surrendered. He promised Carl that he would stand by his side, help him through recovery, and do everything he could to convince the Navy officials to let Carl dive again. The long-awaited day of the naval hearing finally arrived, the very moment that would decide Carl's future in the Navy. At the entrance, Chief Sunday was stopped by a guard who refused to let him in. Inside, Carl faced the board of officers. After answering a few formal questions, Captain Hanks gave an unexpected order. A guard was told to bring in a deep-sea diving suit. The challenge was simple yet brutal. If Carl could walk 12 full steps in a suit weighing over 200 kilograms, he would earn back the right to dive. Outside, Chief Sunday lost his patience and demanded to be let through. Intimidated by his outburst, the guard finally allowed him in. As the doors opened, Sunday saw Carl preparing to wear the massive suit. At that very moment, Carl's wife and young son arrived, silently watching his struggle from behind. Chief Sunday stepped forward and appealed to the officials, pointing out that even a man with 2 strong legs would find it nearly impossible to walk in such a crushing weight, let alone Carl. But Carl met his old mentor's eyes with calm determination. His expression said it all. Disability is not defeat. Seeing his resolve, Sunday chose to stand by him. Once suited up, Carl slowly rose to his feet. Then, step by step, he began the test. 1, 2, 3. The room held its breath as the count continued. Each step was heavier than the last, but Carl refused to stop. By the time he reached the final step, exhaustion covered his face, but triumph shone in his eyes. He had done it. 12 steps completed. The board of officers, including Captain Hanks, stood stunned. A moment later, they acknowledged his victory and declared that Carl had earned his place once again as a U.S. Navy diver. The room erupted in applause. In the middle of the celebration, Chief Sunday quietly stepped back. For him, this was more than just Carl's victory. It was the fulfillment of his duty as a teacher. With deep respect, he gave one last salute to the man who had taught him the greatest lesson of all, that true strength lies in never giving up on your dreams. And that's how Carl Brashear, a man who once faced rejection, racism, and even the loss of his leg, proved to the world that no obstacle could break his spirit. His 12 steps in that crushing suit were more than just a test. They were a symbol of courage, resilience, and the power of never giving up on your dreams. Carl went on to make history as the first African-American U.S. Navy master diver, inspiring generations to come. So what do you think? Would you have the strength to take those 12 steps if life challenged you? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of determination and victory, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Starz Recapped for more powerful movie explanations that will leave you inspired. Until next time, stay strong, stay motivated, and keep chasing your dreams.